All right, so yesterday I went through some, base setup with SASS so we can see how it actually works. And you can watch that stream if you want from yesterday. It's on the channel now. What I want to do today, I want to dig a little deeper and let's find what other interesting features we have here that we can use in their documentation. So I got their docs open. Right here, I got my VS Code from yesterday, basically, and there's really not that much happening here, but it's an HTML file. It's linking to this index SCSS file, which is located, if I close all of this right here, that's pretty much what we're dealing with. And then if we go here inside of this, we have all of these imports, and those are all of these files we imported from here, basically. Which is okay. So now let's continue and basically start again from yesterday. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm actually just going to get rid of all these imports so that we're dealing with a single file. So yesterday we already have all these elements, this other stuff, but right now I'm just going to make it really plain and simple. I'm just going to basically get rid of all of these imports for the time being, and I'm just going to comment it out like so. This way we don't have to deal with any of that. And then I'll go also and simplify my HTML here. So again, it's easy to understand what's going on. So I'll just erase pretty much everything that's in here. And all I got is this one single div with a class hello. That's what I'm dealing with. So let's go ahead and start this, npm start. If you don't know how to set this whole thing up so it works like this, again, you can check out my video from yesterday. But for now, I'm just going to run the server, open this, and we got this, which is what's running that SASS project. Basically, it's just an HTML file with hello in it. And now we should be able to use our styles from here. And these are a bunch of imports I did yesterday. Right now, they don't do anything because we commented it out. So let's now go to our documentation again and see what are some interesting things we should probably look into here. So let's get to this. So we have this variable section here. And again, this I'm going to skip for now. I'll go to rules, I guess. Let's start here. We may have to go back here at some point. This style rules, that could be interesting. But yesterday we talked about like functions. We talked about mixins and include. We also talked about import. Now let's get back to mixins again here. So again, a mixin was a way for us to basically create a block of code and then import that block of code later on someplace else using this include statement. Now, we did talk about how to do this arguments and all the stuff to that mixin, but let's scroll down a little more. We have this keyword arguments and things like that we also talked about yesterday. So they have this thing called content blocks. Let's try to see how this works. So it seems to be like what it allows you to do is to pass some content within the mixin instead of just doing the mixin itself. So let's try this and see how this works. So first of all, let's just create a simple mixin so we can verify that it works. So I'm going to go to VS Code and we'll start with that mixin syntax right here. And we're going to give this some sort of name. So I'm just going to call this title, something like that. So that's going to be my mixin, and all I'm going to do here, I'm just going to set some color so that we can see what's going on, and some font size. And I'll do pretty large, like 2 rem for this font size. Now at this point, let's say I want to style this hello right here, which is this class test, right? So if I wanted to target this class test, then we would do .test. And inside of this, we would say what things we want to apply to this. Only this time, instead of writing our properties here, we'll just import this title mixin, which will basically just put all of this here. So if we just do import, not import, but include actually, include that title like this. If I save this, first of all, let's just look at our final results here to see what this actually produces, right? So yesterday I did look into browser most of the time, but today I'm gonna mostly look at the actual code that was produced by me doing this. So when I save this and run this, the actual output that our parcel is going to produce from this SASS is going to be a CSS file. So we can go here, for example, under this dist and see what CSS file it created. And it's going to be one of these 2 CSS files, whichever one is the latest. So let's just look into this first one on top, this CSS file. And you can see this is what it actually rendered from my code. So my SASS code was this. So this is the mixin I did with title here. And this is the class test I created. And then I include this here. So basically, like I said yesterday, this is equivalent for me like copying this code inside of the title and pasting it here. So that's exactly what we got here in our CSS. See, it's just a class test, and it has that color red and font size 2 rem, which is this mixin stuff we're putting it there, which will allow us to basically reuse this mixin all the time. Is SASS a complete programming language? There's a question. I guess you could say so. It's basically like a way for us to... It has some elements of programming languages in it, right? It has loops, it has if statements, it has variables, technically. But in the end of the day, it only just creates the actual text file for CSS. So I guess you could say it's a programming language, but it only has one purpose. It's not a general purpose programming language. But yes, you can do conditions and you can do loops, and we'll probably get to that today as we keep going forward. So you can see that we basically got this output here. That's exactly what I wanted this to look like. Now, yesterday I also did like, how do I pass some arguments to this title? That is great, but what I want to do like right now, I want to look at that content example right here. So see, when they do include here, they do this what's called hover, and then they do this brackets. So instead of just doing this hover thing right here, so for me that hover would be this title basically. So instead of just doing the title, what I could do, I could just do this and pass something here within this brackets. So for example, let's do something like background color green over there. So I'm going to save this, and you can see that here I got an error, and it's basically giving me mixin doesn't accept a content block. So this is what that content is that we're trying to pass to this title mixin, but we didn't say to accept that here in any way. That's why this gives us an error. It doesn't actually render this code. And this is why they have see this content here. So if I do this content, that content means let's just do this content like so. So basically here what we're saying, whatever we pass here within this brackets, this in this case would be this background color, let's just put that over here where this content actually is located. So now let's save this and hopefully see that error is gone. Now let's go and take a look at our latest CSS and see what that looks like. Now you can see that now this produces color red, background green, and font size to rem. So basically we got this color and font size coming from here. And then this content is what I'm passing here, which is that background color. And we could pass multiple things here. So I did like background color, but maybe we want like border bottom or something. And I'm going to do 1 pixel solid black or something. And again, now I'm passing these two things, which is what's going to go here where the content is actually located. So if I save this, go back and look at the CSS, you see that's exactly what we got. So we can pass entire blocks here and then accept them as content here. Now I'm curious what happens if we don't actually pass anything. What if I just use, I'm going to cut this much. Like, can I still use it like this without actually passing the content? I'm going to assume yes. So I'm going to save it. Now, hopefully it will just do this too, right? Color and font size. So if I go here, see, that's the color and font size. So we can optionally pass the content here, but we don't have to. So I'm going to actually undo to get that content back, which is great. Now, again, coming from yesterday, we could also pass arguments to this, if you remember. And the way that worked, it's kind of like a function looking thing, right? We can do this parentheses, and within this parentheses, we can pass some arguments. So I'm just going to create a variable. I'm going to call this one like color. And then we can use that over here as a variable. And variables, we start with a $sign, right? Like this. And let's pass a default. So we do it by doing this. So by default, it will be red. But we can optionally now pass this color argument to this mixin right here to actually use it. So right now, if I just save this, it shouldn't give us an error. And what it should do the same thing. This should now be red because by default it's red and it's to rem, and then we're going to get the content. So if we go check this out to see what this looks like, see red, pretty much what you would expect. So at this point, let's now actually pass this color. So I'm going to do a set of parentheses here for this title. And then we're going to pass something to this mixin. And I may just end up calling this functions because they kind of work like a function, but it's a mixin basically. So we're going to pass something here. So let's say we pass a color here, blue this time. So now we're passing this blue color here, which means this color should be now replaced instead of red should be blue. So if I go after save and look at our CSS, you'll see that the color became blue and so on. And then we got our mixins. So there we go. So that's how we use this content keyword within our mixins for this to work. And then you could use the same include within other classes as well to reuse this code in many different ways. So that's good. That covers how this works, the content block. Let's see if there is anything interesting here in this mixins. that we didn't cover. And this gets to like loops at this point. So we'll look at them in a little bit. I don't want to get to loops yet right now. But yes, so that covers pretty much how mixins works. As far as things that we should know, that should cover everything. So how we create a mixin, how we pass an argument to mixin, and like we discovered from yesterday, we can also pass named arguments to mixin. So for example, like if I have multiple arguments here, comma separated, like this, and I don't want to pass all of them, I just want to pass the color, then here, when we pass it, we basically do the color is blue, meaning we're passing this named argument color here as the blue color. So if I save this, this should work exactly the same way. It should render the same exact code in the end of the day. May actually close some of this other stuff, just keep this, the ones that we're working on right now, open. So let's get now to the next thing we probably want to look into. And let's look into this interpolation next. So basically, if you don't know what interpolation means, it basically means just concatenating text in a way. It's just piecing different pieces of text together and getting some final piece of text, right? That's pretty much what we're dealing with. And you can see the syntax here is like this pound key and this brackets. Now, if you're familiar with JavaScript, in JavaScript, we, for example, do that dollar sign and curly brackets, and then we do variables inside. Here, it's the pound key and brackets. So maybe we can do an example of that. This would be a good example here. Let's kind of expand on that example, how this actually did what it did, right? So yeah, I'm going to go to our project here. So we got this mixin, and we accept this content and all of it. And then we run that mixin like this. Let's actually simplify this. And the way we're going to run this mixin, let's just not pass any content to it. And we'll just call this mixin title with the right now it's color blue. And for right now, I'm even going to probably remove this for the time being. So we're just do plain and simple, just call this, which right now will make color red, font size to rem. That's where we are. So within this now, within this test class, let's create a span here. So I'm going to create a span. And let's put that hello here. And maybe let's give this span a class. We'll call this super title, something like that. Or even, let's do something different. Let's do title red. Should be fine. So now I need to target this. Now we could just target this particular title red class here, right? But that's not what I'm going to do. Instead, what I'll do, I'll go inside of this, which is the mixin we put here. Now, if I, for example, had to do that before we even go to mixins, if I had to now style this title red, that would go inside of this test, right? So I would go here and do title red, and I would do this, basically, over here. I would write whatever I want to do about this particular span that I'm targeting. But I want to use this inside of the include here, right here in the mixin. So when I do this include, I want to include this title red here. So therefore, I'm just going to move that inside of this mixin right here someplace. and we're going to get this, the title red inside of this. So at this point, if I just go here and do something like color red, let's actually change this default to like green, like this. So if I save this, let's actually look at our CSS so we can see what happens. So we're including this title mixin, which is going to basically put all of this stuff right here. And we're not passing any content, so there will be no content. And this color is going to be green for this color on the outer thing. See, that's the color green, font size this. And you can see then we got this title red within the test. And that would be this color red. So that worked. So it created this class within the class sort of syntax. And it did get us what we actually want out of this. But now let's actually do a parameter here. So I'm just going to do some text. It's literally some text. It doesn't matter what you call this. And again, let's set a default for this, I guess, what it's going to be. So by default, I'm going to make that text to be unknown or something. And then over here, instead of doing red directly in this particular thing, let's do that string. So we'll do that pound key and this syntax, and we're going to pass that text variable right here. Basically, we want this to be replaced by this right here. So now it should say title dash unknown, hopefully, as the class name, and this should be color red still. So if I save this, go back, see, it became title unknown, because we're basically passing this by default, this argument, and we didn't pass that argument. But now we can actually pass that argument here, and I can say that text, I'm going to do it as named argument because I'm not going to pass a color, at least not yet. So I'm going to say should be red, like this. So now I'm going to pass this text red here. And then we're going to use that over here, which will be title dash red. So at this point, if I go back to our code here, see it says title red. And this one within that test right there. And again, we can go back and, for example, with this color that I did here, let's actually get rid of this color from here and pass that color over here within that span style that we did. So now it should be the color by default green and text should be unknown. So I guess we'll just make the text green too by default. But now we can actually pass those two things. So now I have the text red and I can also pass the color red. And if I save this, now it should create, see, title red, and this color is going to be red over here. But we can also go here and do color blue and text blue. And now it should basically generate this. So now we basically have this blue here, text, and we have this color blue that goes within this. Just like that. Now, we don't have to do this named. We could just do like this. We did pass named arguments, but we can also just pass our arguments in the order. And that should be the same thing. So just to verify that this works, let's just do orange and orange. Something like this. And now if we go back, we should see that this part says orange and this says orange. So that works. And that's that. So this is that, see, that syntax. So if you want to pass some string in some other part of this, that's the way you do it. You do that pound key, you do that curly brackets, And within those curly brackets, you basically pass your variables, and it's going to use them. And this is going to get a lot more useful when we start using like loops and things like that. For now, probably not so much, but yeah, you can at least see how that actually works. So that's that. One other thing I want to get to a little more in depth before we maybe even look into loops and stuff like that is this parent selector. So this ampersand right here, how we use that. So let's actually go back and do an example of that. So this was this. I'm not going to use this anymore, so I'm just going to get rid of this for now. And let's try to use that parent selector. So for example, if I, again, target this test, that's our class. Now within this class, if we have another class like title red, this is the way we do this, right? Now we're saying that this is inside of this, which in this case, see, this title red is inside of this test. But what if I want to, for example, target something that is more like on the same level as this, right? So we have this test, and if I do something like 2 classes, and I'm going to call it test 2. Now, usually the way you would target this, you would do .test.test2 right next to each other without a space in the middle to get to that. So that would be like this. That's the way you would have done that without a space, because with a space, you're saying now this is inside of this, but without a space, you're saying it's the same element. But we should also be able to do this by starting this right here and doing that test 2. Let's do color red or something. Let's save this and see what this does. So if I save this and go back and look here, see it did this test.test2 right here. So basically this ampersand is what we call our parent selector, and the parent is this, right? This is our parent. So we're saying take this parent and put it right here instead of this ampersand. So if you take this parent right here and put it right in here instead of this ampersand, you will end up with .test.test2. And this is why if you want to do some sort of hover state when you roll over something, the way that usually looks in CSS, you do something like this, right? But here, what we do, we use, again, that parent selector, which would be .test, and then we can do hover, which means, again, just basically put that test right in here instead of this parent element. And if I save this and go back, you'll see the same thing happens. Now, what I'm curious about is, what if we don't do this? What if we just say test, like something like that, 1? What happens in this case? So see, it just did test 1. So it literally just takes the text of that class and puts whatever you type right next to it. So if I type 1, it literally just types 1 right here. So this is now test 1. So I can go here and do another one of those. Something like this. And it doesn't have to be a number, right? So we can do something like this. So with this, now if we go back and see what this outputs, see we got like test 1, we got test 2, we got test green, which is basically whatever this is plus this right next to it. And if you wanted like a dash, I assume you could do something like this. So now it's test dash green or something. Yeah. So basically this means the parent here. Now I'm curious if we can do a sub element here. So for example, we got this green here. What if we go and now refer to the parent of that? So this would be, right now we're talking about test green. And let's say I want to do light like this. So I'm going to do color green and just change this a little to a lighter green color, something like this. So let's see what this outputs. So if I save this and go back, now let's take a look. So see, we got test green and light. So basically at this point now, this refers to the parent being this. So with this parent, we then add this dash light. So apparently we can kind of keep doing this and in that in multiple levels. So we can go here and I'm going to assume keep doing another level down. Or maybe in the same level, we want to do a dark option too, right? We just going to do like dark. Something like that. And we'll do color and we'll do green. Only for this green, we'll make it a darker green like this. So now we should have this green, then green light, and then green dark. So if I save this, we go back and take a look. See, we got this green dark, we got light, and we got this green. And notice they're all top level classes right now, the way this worked. Because I never really did anything else other than using the parent in the beginning. And it works. All right, cool. So let's get rid of this. So now we know this couple of things. Let's look into maybe like some loops at this point. So, and by the way, I'm just curious, if we leave this empty, what is the output? Does it still give us empty test class or does it give us nothing because it's empty? So if we do save, yeah, it gives us nothing. So because we left it empty, it automatically knows this doesn't do anything. So it does not include. That's nice. All right. So that's that. So we got the parent selector handled. There's apparently also like placeholder selectors. Let's see, what is this? And it's not included in the CSS output. Oh, this is interesting. So apparently this placeholder selector is something that starts what I can see with a percentage sign. So for example, if I do title again, I guess, since I did it last time. And we'll do like color red, and we'll do font size. Something like this. If I save this, doesn't show up here at all. Like so, which is this example they do here. And then they got this extend keyword, which is extending that. Okay. So basically now we're creating actual visible classes because right now this is an invisible thing there. It's, I guess, like a template sort of thing. We can think about this. So we can take this and create now a couple of different titles. So I'm going to say title dash large, or, well, actually the size, let's not do the size here. Let's do title small. And then here in this title small, let's say we're going to set a font size, and that's going to be 0.5 rem, like this. So right now, this should just render this small title. And if we go back, you'll see that's exactly what this is. But then, seems like we can do this extend keyword, and then refer to this. And that should, from what I'm understanding, just take this color red and put it here. So kind of like a mix-in. Yeah, but not as complicated as mix-ins. See, we literally just took that and put it here. And then if I do more things here, it should just go where that extend is. So if I save it, see, that's pretty much that. And then we can have another title. And for this one, we can do title large. And we can do like 3 rem on this. And we can use that same extend, that same title up here, which should be using this red color border bottom, but now it should have this larger font size. See, we have title small, which has the smaller size, large, which has the larger size, and then we got these two, which have both these two things on them. So yeah, that works just fine. So we can extend it, apparently. So this is like an invisible class that sits there until you actually use it someplace. Now, what if we just extend something? Can we extend only from these, or can we extend from anything? Where is this extend coming from? Let's go to this rules. See, there's this extend, which is what we just did a second ago. Okay, so this doesn't have to be that invisible thing you're extending from. So right now here, we're extending from this invisible title class, which doesn't really exist anywhere here. But it could also be an actual visible class. So we can, for example, call this one like main title, like this. And then later, we can extend that main. Using that main title, we can extend this to other title classes. So now it should make like this small class that includes these two lines. It should make this large class that also includes those same two lines, which is the same thing we had before, by the way. That part is going to be exactly the same, except that this time we're going to have this class available as well, the main title class. It's not going to be hidden. So if we go back to our CSS after I save and look here, see, we still have that main title class. It's not hidden anymore. So it's available to use in addition to the other two. So if you don't want that to be available, then apparently you just use this percentage sign, and that will make it like a hidden thing. So with this change, this main title will not be in our output anymore. See, it's just the large and small. So that works. So that was interesting. So finally, let's try to look into loops and stuff like that. That would be interesting at this point. So I think we know enough about how these other things work at this point to look into loops. So let's try to find where they are. flow control. Yeah, flow control. See, like if statements, each, for. Well, let's see what this each is. This would be like for each thing. Yeah, that's nice. So see, that's for each loop. So you give it a list and you loop through the list. And then we have what I'm going to assume is a regular for loop that goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Well, let's start with this each. That could be useful. There is an example here. So for each something in something, and that would be this definition. So first we have to basically create a list that we can loop through. And there is also looped with maps. So basically it's like an object sort of thing with key value pairs. Okay, well, let's start with a basic one, this one. So if I go back, erase all of this. Right there. So again, it's going to be an empty CSS output at this point. So let's do that variable of some sort. We're going to create a variable where we're going to store a list of a type. So I'm just going to keep it simple. I'll just call it columns. And we'll make it, well, I guess equals is not valid syntax here. We're going to do this. And I'll just do something like 1, 2, 3, 4. Something like that. I don't know if we have to do string qualifiers here like this, but I guess we're going to find out in a second. So I'm going to do that. And now let's loop through this list 1, 2, 3, 4 using that, see this thing. So it says for each something in a list of something. Okay, so that would be this keyword each, and we'll just give it a variable here, like col would be a variable name in that list. So our list is this columns, this. That's what we're looping through. And with every iteration in this loop, this col is going to become one of these things. So it's going to be 1 first, then 2, then 3, then 4. So let's here create a class. So we'll say call size dash. And if you remember that string thing that we used to just add, so I'm going to do that pound key with brackets right here. That's going to be the class name. And I'm going to pass that col right here. And we're going to do this brackets here. So that's going to be the class name we're going to create. So we're going to create a class name that's going to say .col dash size dash whatever we pass here, replaced with this col. So here now we can say whatever we're going to do about this. So I'm just going to, for now, we'll just pass flex1 for us to just see if this whole thing works. So if I save this, let's go take a look and see what this ended up giving us. So see, it ended up giving us 4 different classes. We got the call size 1, and then call size 2, 3, 4, and all of them have this flex 1 in them. So that's our loop here. And again, if we just keep adding more here, like 5, 7, something like that, I save it. Now I should have all of those here. Yep, that works. So that's nice. Now, what if I just pass the list directly here? I'm curious, does that work? Can I just do 1, 2, 3 right in here without actually using any of this? Yeah, I can. So you can just do the list right here and not have a variable on top at all, and it will still work. That's nice. I am going to put the columns here, though. That's okay. So this is okay, right? But if I wanted to, let's say, create columns, like, for example, if you've used Bootstrap or something like this, the way it works, like we have like sizes 12, which would be like 100% of the size. Then we have like 6, which would be like half of the size. And let's say we want to do 4 and 3, something like that. So these 4. And this right now is going to create all of those classes with 12, 6, 4, and 3, right? But you wouldn't want all of these to have the same, like if I want to define a width property here inside of this, I want these to be different widths, like 12 would be 100%, this would be 50%, this would be 33%, and this is going to be 25%. So that's the way these should be defined. So how can we actually have that here? I guess one way we can do that is by doing some sort of calculation, like math. We can look into it and see how we can actually do that. But before I get to it, I want to use that, see this sort of thing we have here. So we have this like key value pairs dated here. And apparently it's in parentheses, separated by commas and colons. Okay, so let's do that. So for example, here, I'm going to copy this line and comment this line because I have a feeling I'm going to need that later on. So what we would do, we would basically just do parentheses here. And we will say for 12, which is the first key we're going to use, we're going to have some sort of percentage size, like that would be 100%. And then for 6, we would do 50%. And then for 4, we're going to do 33.33%. And then for 3, we'll do 25%. Something like that. So now we should be able to loop through this key value pairs here. And let's see how we actually get those, because this columns now is going to have this whole kind of like key value in it. So let's go back to their docs. And okay, so you just comma separate two variables here. So basically, we're going to leave this first one COL, but we will do a comma and do another $sign, and this would be like % or something. Again, it's a variable name. You can call it whatever you want. But at this point, this 12 is going to become this COL, and this 100% is going to become this % variable, which means we should be able to just stick it in here, save it, and now let's go and take a look at what our output is with this loop. So if I go back and look at this index, see, I just ended up creating all of this classes. Now, because they don't share the same exact value, it didn't just put them all in one line, comma separated. It actually created this separate one. So 12 is now 100%, 6 is 50%, 4 is 33%, and this is that. Cool. And if we wanted this columns to only work like this within, let's say, a flex box or something like that, then we wouldn't have this flex actually if this was a flex box. So let's actually go back and get rid of the flex from here for now. And now we should be able to put this within another class, I'm going to assume. So let's say we have like a row class, and we want all these columns to be within the row class to have this effect. Let me just tab this, save it. So now I'm going to assume all those classes would be when they're inside of this row class. Let's go take a look. See, now it's row dot, and then this, and this, and this. And then for the row class itself, we can say it should be display flex. Something like that. So now we should have a row class with display flex, and then we should have all these other classes we created with this loop over here. See, that gives some sort of like size to all this stuff. And then you can basically define it. It doesn't really matter what CSS you're going to do once you understand that we're basically just dynamically building this CSS string in the end of the day to get the output. And this way, if I wanted more here, like if I want to add another one, all I have to do is go to this list and say, okay, so if we have like size 2, for size 2, let's make sure that's like 15% or whatever you decide that percentage is going to be. So now this should automatically generate another one of those, which would be when you do like row, when you do COL size 2, it should make it 15%. So if we go back and take a look, see, There it is. That's 15% rule. Good. So that worked actually pretty well. Now, what I'm curious is if we could have done this without actually defining these percentages at all. And what I mean by that is if I just get rid of this, and let's just remove this percent out of here. And this, let's just set it to 100% for now, just so that we don't have an error. And I'm gonna uncomment this line like this. So I wanna see if I can make that same thing happen just by using this, by using some calculations. So instead of this 100% to pass here, I wanna calculate that percentage and put it in there as the size over here. And I'm going to assume like if the first one is 12, so we can divide 12 by 12, we should have 1, right? That should be 100%. And then the second one is 6. So if we divide 6 by 12, that should be half, which is our like 50%. So what if we just go here and do calc, which is calculation, and take that, well, COL, and try to divide it by 12. What will happen now? So I'm going to save this, go back and take a look. So apparently we got pixel sizes. We did get like 1, 0.5, 33, and all of this, but we got sizes in pixels. I wanted this to be percentages. So let's see how we can do that. How can we make this percentage? Do they have utilities for this? Maybe. So let's see. Operations, built-in modules, math. That might work. Let's look into this math module and see what that does. So this would be like rounding up numbers. It's like JavaScript, floor, max, round. As you can see, we may need that round, I guess, to round that number. But basically, we need to get a number like 1 and convert it to a percentage like 100%. 0.5 should be converted to 50%. So we might need to do some weird function here. And if we have to, we can make a function like that. But I have a feeling they may already have something like that because that seems like it's a common thing you would want to do. But so far, it doesn't look good. I don't see anything like it. Unit. Percentage. The function is identical to number times 100%. That should work. See, math, percentage, and then we pass the number in there. So let's try that. So I'm going to copy that, go back, and basically that calculation I did right here, we'll just pass it within that math percentage like this. And apparently I got an error here. Expected expression. So do we still have to have the calc here? Save it. I think it still failed. So there is no module with namespace. So it doesn't know that this math exists apparently. So do we have to import that somehow? Let's go back and take a look. But it does say, however, it's the same as just multiplying by 100%. So now I'm curious if we can just multiply that by 100% in the loop. But how do we actually use this module? says it doesn't exist. Built-in modules, overview. So apparently we have to do something like this. Use on top. That's what it seems like. So I'm going to go on top here and do use, and it was, what was it called? Math, I guess. Like this. I think that worked. See, it ran the code. So let's go take a look. Cool. There it is. So now I got 100%, 50%, 33%, 25%, just like that with that calculation using this. So which means that now if I wanted to have like all different sizes, like the way you do it from Bootstrap, I could literally just stack those numbers here and it would just figure it out what percentage that would be, like 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. We could probably create this whole thing with the using some sort of loop too, so we didn't have to write all of this. But right now I'm going from 12 to 1, and if I save this, it should have created all of those with their appropriate sizes. Like this is like 75%. This is 66 something percent. Seems to work just fine. So there it is. Now we have a proper loop that allows us to basically loop through a list and do something. And we can either loop through a regular list like this, or we can loop through a list like this, which is like key value pairs. Okay, let's go back to our loop and see if there's anything else we want to look into. Flow control, where was it? There it is. So I was looking at this for, and that was this each thing. Basically, we're looping through that. So we did pretty much this. We also did this. That is how this works. So apparently you can have more than 2 things. Like here, I had this key value pair list, but we can also have this space separated items list, like 3 here, 3 here, 3 here, like so, and that should also work. So let's do an example of this so we can see how this actually works out. So let's say I want to create some borders of different types. So I'm going to basically say borders, and we'll basically make it that the first one is 1 pixel solid black, and then the second one is 2 pixel solid gray, and then the third one is 3 pixel dotted green. And I'm going to assume we could just keep going like this as much as we want to go. But now I have basically this comma separated list of 3 items. We got 3 of them. So we should be able to now do a loop. So I'm going to do each. Again, we're going to give this variable name. We're going to say each. I'll just call it value in, and then that variable is called borders. Like so. Why am I getting this? Oh, I forgot to do a semicolon. I did a comma here. That's why it was not highlighting it, right? Okay, there it is. So that's our loop. So now let's say we want to create this different borders using these different things, right? So I'm going to do, well, the thing is like, what are we going to call them since it's going to be multiple of them? We probably need to use something here as a name. So can we use this actual color as a value? I guess we'll find out in a second. So I'm going to do something like dot and then border dash, and I'll try to put that color in here, but if this color isn't string, so I'm not sure. And by the way, I didn't do this right. We should separate this thing into 3 different things. So we're going to do size, comma, style, comma, color. So that's what it really should be. So 3 things are coming out of each one of these. So that would be, let's see if we can actually put that color as a string here too. I have a feeling this is gonna give me an error. So I'm gonna do border, and then we'll do $size, $, then we got style, and then $color. Yep, I got an error. See, it says basically you can't use it. If you really want to use the color value, use this. So apparently we can trick it into it by doing this string plus. That's what it's telling me to do. Okay, so do we have to put this in parentheses maybe for this to know what to do, or does it just know what to do? Oh, you know what? I'm doing it in the wrong spot. It should be here. So it should be quotations plus the color. Okay. Let's see if that is going to work. So I'm going to go back. Let's actually comment this first one out so we don't have a bunch of stuff on a page. It's going to be easier to see what happened. So now we got this. So if I save this, we go back and take a look. Hey, that worked. Look. So we got border black, border gray, border green. So we're using that color name to create the class name. And then we use the actual color itself here. And then if we wanted to create more of these classes, we can simply just go here and stack more. And that should now create another one, which is going to be this red class, and it's going to use that red color here and all the other properties. There it is. So we're making a loop, and we're actually outputting our CSS. This actually works. All right, so that's looping. So that's the for each loop. Let's see if there's anything more here. No. Oh, that covers pretty much everything there is. So basically, we can have a list and we can loop through it. And the way our lists work, we can either have this, what they call map. We can have this simple comma separated list like we have here, or we can have comma separated multiple items with a space in the middle. And then we can unpack those 3 values into multiple variables here in the loop and use it within the loop. Very nice. So then we got like 4. This would be a for loop. Basically, it will basically start from 1, end it through 3. See, like here, it says for I 1 through 3, like this. So this would be probably a good way for us to do that previous example I was doing to create that size of column sort of thing. So this is the syntax. Let me just copy that syntax before I forget what it is. So if we uncomment this, and I tried to do something similar to what I did here when I was creating all of this classes, let's actually uncomment that math import so we can use that module here. And then here, I'm going to just do a loop. And the way we were doing this, we needed 12 columns, right? So I'm going to say from 1 through 12. That's going to be our I. We can call it COL, I guess, but it doesn't matter. It's just going to be a number from 1 to 12. And then I should be able to pretty much just use this, I think. the same way I had it before. So if I just uncomment this block, so this was that row, and within the row, now we got this, well, the row is display flex, and here we got, well, we don't need this loop anymore. So we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to get rid of this, which tells me that we don't want to loop this row part. So let's actually move this row outside of the loop, and then move the closing of that here too. We'll just loop the column part, which is going to be this. So basically now we got this same row structure. We create this loop, for loop, that makes it a variable col that goes 1 to 12. And then we're going to grab that, this display is not going to be here. It's going to be on the row. And then we're just basically going to loop through it like this. And we're going to create all those columns by putting this number here, like 12, and then we'll do the calculation here and figure out the percentage like we did before. So if I save this and go back, we should have all those classes. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2. Like that. Now, I'm curious if we can do the opposite. Can we go from higher number to lower number, 12 to 1? If I do save, yeah, so it starts from 12, see, and it moves down to 1. So we can go from whatever starting point you want until whatever ending point. So 12 to 1, 1 to 12, it's up to you. And that's our regular for loop. Basically, if you want to have this index, you can have it. Now, that brings me to another question. Can I get index in for each loop? Like, for example, when we had this each one, is there a way to get an index in this? Because that could be useful sometimes. You might want to loop through this and then get like, this is the first one, this is the second one, this is the third one, to get the index of some sort. I don't think it said anything in here about that. Variable expression, variable expression. No, nothing in documentation that says that you can actually do it. So it doesn't seem like you can get an index from a for each loop, but maybe it's possible, it's just not undocumented. Then we have while loop. I'm not going to even look at this, but it could be useful, I guess, at some point. But this is the same thing, using a while loop and looping until a condition is met. Doesn't matter. So then we have our if and else statement. So we can do like some sort of if statement and say, if something, do something. Else, do something else. That could be, I guess, interesting. So maybe we want like to do like odd and even columns or something like that. Even though you would just do that with even and odd in CSS. Can't picture like why. I'm pretty sure you would use if statements at some point, but this would probably be more useful when you create a function or something rather than doing this. So for example, if you want to change the color, I think the color one we had right now, where's that color operator we did yesterday? So colors here, the scale color thing we got. So it was like, if you go up, it makes it lighter. If you go negative, it makes it darker. This is the way that scale worked. But you may want to create your own function that makes it a little easier to work with this. So to do that, let's actually get rid of all of this at this point. And let's create a function. So a function, and I'm gonna call it make. Let's just call it lighter. That's going to be our function, and I'm going to grab this color and put it here. Now here we're going to pass the actual color here, so we'll have color as our argument, and we're going to pass it here for this function. And then we'll have like by how much you want to make it lighter, right? So maybe you'll just do something like %. And if you pass like 15% here, then we want to do this plus and that %. Hopefully that works. Otherwise, we may have to do that string syntax here. But I think that should work. So we're just going to do plus %. We're going to take the color here. And this lightness is the parameter name. So that's going to stay the same. And here we can just return that. So that should be a new function now that's called lighter, which means if we, for example, create a class, here I can say color, and then I can use that function lighter. And here I'm going to pass the color and by how much lighter I want it to make. Like, let's say we want to make it 40% lighter. And with this, it says border. What border? Is this an old message? Let's just do Control-C and rerun this again. Yeah, that's an old message. All right, fair enough. So I'm going to take a look here. So, yep, we got the color, and see it's kind of like a little lighter red color by 40%. So we can go by 80% or 70% lighter, something like that. Go back, and it should have made it even a lighter color. There it is. It does. And then we can do another function, for example, to make it darker. And we pass the color, we pass, again, I'm getting the syntax, meaning I probably forgot some semicolons. I probably should have been using just SASS, not SCSS, so I don't have to worry about all these brackets and stuff. But nevertheless, I'm using SCSS. So color here, % here, and for this, to make it darker, you do the same thing, only to do negative this %. Which means here, if I want like a color to be darker, let's do background for this one. Keep forgetting the semicolons. Background color, and we'll do darker, and we'll pass some sort of color like blue, and by how much we want to make it darker, let's say 50%. So now it should make it, I guess, see darker here, lighter here. So yeah, that's our function. Now we could probably now take both of these and convert it to a single function, basically with some if statements, right? We can basically say whether we're making it darker or lighter, and then what percentage is. So let's say we'll have another parameter here. We'll call this action or something. And then here we'll do an if statement. We'll say if. Did they have parentheses for their if statements or not? Let's go check it out. Rules, flow, if and else. No, not for the condition. So condition doesn't go in parentheses. Okay. So kind of like the Apple thing. Okay, so there it is. So I'm going to do if that action equals, let's say, lighter. Something like this. Then we'll take this and put this here. And then we'll add an else statement, I guess. Otherwise, we'll do this. So I guess by default, we can set the action to be something. So maybe we should have done the opposite, but it doesn't really matter. So by default, we'll make it to be darker or something. No, there should be a colon, not an equal sign. So now let's use this function. Instead of lighter, let's just say update color or something. And let's use that over here. And we're going to pass what action we want to do in here. So if we do lighter, let's just simplify this for now. Let's remove this default for the time being. This should not be this. Let's get rid of that. We want to use that right here. Update color, and we're going to pass that action here, lighter, and we're going to do 50%. So let's see if this works. So now this should be this blue over here. Then we pass the action as the second parameter, which goes here. And then we got this 50%, which goes here. And then we're going to check if it equals. Is this the correct way to check if it equals? Probably not. It's probably like double equals or something like that. So let's just go and make sure. Maybe we have to check operators to see. Yeah, it's double equals. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so it equals lighter. Then hopefully right now, because this says lighter by 50%, it should have made that blue lighter by 50%. So if we go back here, see, it's kind of like a lighter blue. But if we go here and change this to darker as an action, now it should have made it like a darker blue. There it is. And then we can change like by how much, maybe like 70% darker. And this way, if we go here, there should be really dark blue. And if I go lighter, that should be light blue here. Yeah, so that works pretty much like you would expect. So that's an if statement. Would probably be useful sometimes to work in this, but it's pretty straightforward. As you can see, we can probably also just do a return. I'm going to assume, I'm just curious if functions just do one return. So if I, for example, do this, if I don't do an else statement and do a return. So let's see if this always returns this, or it's until the first return. I'm going to assume when it hits this first return, it's done. So at this point, right now this is lighter, so should make it lighter. So if I go back and take a look, see, it's a lighter blue color. That's correct. And if I go and change this to, well, I guess darker, but it could really be anything else. So darker. So now it shouldn't pass this if, so it should return this. So now it should be, yeah. So we can do that too. So no else statements on this, just return. What if we want to do like else if? So we just do else if with a space. Okay, so we can then, for example, here, do that else if statement. So we can say else if that same action equals darker, like this. Then we're going to return this. So then we can say if it's not darker, it's not lighter, if they pass something else to this, then we can return and in the end of the day, it just returns a color. So let's, in all the other cases, just return black. Let's see if we can do that. So if we're making it lighter, then we're going to make it lighter by this %. If it's darker, we're going to make it darker by this %. If the action is anything else other than lighter or darker, then it's going to make it black. So save it, go back. See, right now it's the dark blue color. That's darker. If we do lighter, it should be lighter blue color, which it is. And if I pass some other random stuff here, it's going to be black. It works like you would expect. So we have if statements, we have else if statements, we have else statements if you want to use them. We also can return in our functions like you would expect. Okay, so that covers a lot of interesting things. So we did use this use statement apparently a second ago. And that was when I was trying to import this built-in module. So if I wanted to use any one of these things right here, I would have to do that use statement on top. So I did that for this math to do that % thing. But this, so let's see what else you do with this use statement. Built-in modules. And so we did use it with built-in modules, but apparently you can also use it with your own files. Namespace, function, namespace, you can write, okay. So let's see, so this is like importing in a way. So what's the difference between this? Yeah, there it is. Differences from import. So it's intended to replace the import, basically, but it's intentionally to work differently. Here are some major differences. Use only makes variables, functions, and mixin available within the scope of the current file. Okay, I guess that makes sense. All right. So the regular import will basically just import the variables on global scope. And on this one, see, we can kind of scope our variables to that import. That's nice. Let's do a quick example of that. So if I get rid of all of this, I know all of those imports too, I guess. Get rid of all of those. I'm actually going to just make a file here. I'm going to make it on this level as this SCSS file right here. And we're going to add that file. We're going to call this I don't know. Let's just call it test because I don't have a good name. As CSS. And because we're going to import this, we have to do this underscore test as CSS. That's going to be this. So here, if I make a variable, or a couple of variables, it doesn't matter. And then I import this to this index file. If we use like regular import statement, like this, we would have just done test, which is the same name of the file without that underscore in here. And then at this point, like I could refer directly to this color and background. So I can just go here and do a style and make the color that $color, which is coming from that other file. And then I can use this back color here as our background color property, like this. So that works. Well, at least it should work. So if I go back and take a look, see, we got this test class with those colors set. One is red, the other one is green. Now, if we change this to use instead of import, the rest being the same, I'm going to assume this is going to fail. Yep, see, it fails. And what does it say? Well, it says undefined variable. So the color doesn't exist here anymore. So because we're using this use statement test, it seems like the way we're going to get to that color, we're going to type the module dot the variable. I hope I remember that right as far as the syntax, but we'll find out. So if I save this, let's see if that, it seems like it worked, but I don't know. Let's just do Control-C and rerun this to make sure there's no errors. Yep, see, it did run that just fine. So if I go back and take a look, this should still work. It still outputs red, green, just for testing. Let's just change this to like blue and this one orange to make sure this operates. See, blue, orange. So now we can kind of namespace the variables instead of just having the color global. We can have, this is the color that comes from this test module, like this. And based on what it said in their docs, we can also do this for functions and mixins. So if we create any functions or any mixins, again, we'll call the mixin or the function by doing the name of the module dot and the name of the function, or name of the thing and mixin. All right, that makes sense. So the same thing, and I assume the way we would point to like an inner folder would be very similar to how import works. So if this test is inside of this main folder like this, if I move it over here, now it's inside of this main, which is in inner level, then I would go here and do main test. Now I'm curious if this stays the same. Do we just call it test on this then? Yeah, it seems like we do. So let's just, again, just to make sure this works, let's do green, orange. And with this, it should output this. Yes, it does. So there it is. That's your use statement. So if you want to import in a way that doesn't make these like variable names global in your code, you can do this. And then you can do the name of the module dot the variable name. And same thing with functions and mixins. You can do the same sort of thing, which would be nice. So it's another way to import your code. All right, so I think that covers a lot. We've pretty much went through most of the stuff here. I'm pretty sure there's more little things that are worth to know, but this should pretty much cover most of what you would want to ever do in SASS. I'm sure there is other little things here and there, but that should be not difficult to figure out after this. Okay, so that should do it for today's stream. Thanks for everybody who was watching this. And that should cover SASS.